The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
Florida still can't keep its air to itself. We still have dew points in the 70s, and even for summer, this is absolutely ridiculous for New England. The humidity has gotten so bad that the camera's touchscreen is glitching, either because of condensation or because of the wind noise from this fan. Regardless, I'm going to be taking a break after this until the weather is more reasonable, because even for summer, this is absolutely ridiculous. Indeed, the condensation and finger oil from pressing just once on the screen is enough to glitch the thing out until you clean the screen. That's how awful things are right now. I don't know if I've seen a dew point hit the 70s here since I've been keeping track of it, actually. So this is a record. Probably tropical levels of humidity. So we're over on Nova Bench, even though you just saw Tuxedo with a fan bolted to it, because I want to show you a very, very sobering set of Nova Bench results. 1837. Now, I got my machine up to 1470 something, 1475 last go round. So this is a score on Nova Bench of 1837 with a Core i3 and a GTX 970. This is the i3 6320, the latest Skylake revision as of this recording. It's supposed to be a little bit more friendly to multimedia folks who want a cheap multimedia and gaming machine. And it works pretty well. So well that the CPU score is 582. Now the reason why that is such a concern for me is because the 1090Ti that I have does 570 if you don't overclock it. So if you don't mess with overclocking, the 1090Ti that I have from 5 years ago is a 570. This is the current generation Core i3 Skylake, 582 in Nova Bench, with a significantly lower TDP. That's what 5 years will do to an otherwise competent computer system. Make it look really old, really fast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Fake HD, because this thing won't stop glitching out. I'll see what I can do given the limited resources I now have. The humidity got to it. Let's see if some time in the refrigerator can take care of that for us. As we were saying, before the glitchy camera recorded this last bit with no audio, so therefore it didn't make it into... Yeah. So remember, the 570s is basically... The 570s are basically what my 1090Ti does, with roughly double the TDP wattage. So here's the other Nova Bench results for that so-called Core i3, that so-called low-end processor. A little less flicker vision on the non-HD camera, but anyways. 565, 554, 564, 582, 561, 565, 553, 544, 557. So if this so-called low-end processor isn't neck and neck with the 1090Ti, then it's right below it. It says quite a bit for today's low-end Skylake versus the best processor AMD had in 2010. What are you gonna do? As for Tuxedo, it's looking as hack job as ever. I gotta send the vacuum robot around to vacuum the rugs later on. But basically, I found out that there's a thermal component to the problems I've been having with this machine's stability. Up here where the power supply is was getting really, really hot. So there's probably a bit of an airflow issue. Now, I can't really add extra fans to improve the terrible cooling that most power supplies in these non-dust sucker or pre-dust sucker cases have. What I could do is increase the air pressure of the case by having fans blowing air into it. These may not affect the temperatures of the processor or anything, but they'll up the air pressure in the case, which forces more air hopefully through the power supply and keeps it cooler. Only one fan that doesn't spin very fast isn't very good for cooling, so I've got one of Monolith's Venturis, well, eventually Monolith's Venturis, blowing in, bolted to the outside, and what I did was I cut the honeycomb stuff right around there and then bent it all in so it wouldn't slash your shirt if you carried this thing. Yeah, that was a mistake I had to fix real quickly before I destroyed any shirts. But I've got a Venturi bolted to the outside, blowing in because there's no room with the third-party cooling, and of course there's also one of the Fractal 120s, which kind of gives Tuxedo its, well, Tuxedo-ish look, or at one point it did when I still used these 120s. That's standard hookup. It's all using the standard fan controller as the chair creaks away. But if this old camera will focus, the last thing, I like it because it is heavier. It may not be as good quality video, but it is heavier, so it feels a lot more solid in the hand. But then again, it's a couple of years older than the other one, so maybe they don't make them like they used to. I don't know. Even the zoom is kind of a... Ooh, nice zoom. It does feel a lot more solid than its successor, even though the successor was 1080p. So anyways, the last thing that I want to do, because I'm actually tossing around the idea of putting Monolith on hold, because the Silver Bullet is sitting around unused. At the very same time, if I can get some kind of bundle together, it would be interesting if I could modernize the motherboard in my main system and go back to the Silver Bullet, which is going to sound crazy to some people, but with lower wattage, if I can build it off of power consumption or power efficiency first, could I build a comparable gaming machine with more stability and that might even have better performance than Tuxedo because the motherboard is newer? I received a very, very on-the-spot comment that the motherboard inside this thing might be old enough that the PCI Express standard on it is outdated, and therefore that's what's bottlenecking the brand new graphics card, instead of me thinking it was the CPU. So now I'm curious, if I transfer my main hardware, maybe not even bother with the third-party cooling with the Core i3, but if I set up a Core i3 in the Silver Bullet, could I have a comparable and an actual performance improvement, even though I'm going to a so-called budget CPU? And then this one, well, we'll put the Kepler card back in Tuxedo and make it the secondary system that it was going to be anyways. Newegg might have a super combo that I could use to keep that cost down, maybe even go to DDR4. The big thing is, I just can't imagine myself with Monolith right now, because Monolith, not so sure about it. I'm not so sure that I'm really ready to spend the amount of money that it would take to get to that kind of a system that is what I had in mind, as opposed to taking steps to get there through reviving the Silver Bullet and stuff like that. But that's something we can figure out some other time. Let's grab the kilowatt and let's see what this thing is pulling for wattage with the drive setup that it has right now and the new 1060. Okay, ready to get going here. We're going to fire this thing back up. Now this is mostly to spec out what the maximum wattage on the power supply should be. Also the rails are going to count too, because we want it to be able to support a few cages of drives. So it's not just the wattage. We got to make sure we don't run out of connectors. We got to make sure that the special connectors are there. So we're firing everything up. 100 watts-ish for normal operation. I think it goes up to 200 or 300, but I want to see what exactly the wattage looks like when this thing's running full blast. So World of Warcraft, turn it up all the way or something, and then especially that scaling feature. We might freeze the computer while doing this. So we do cross the 200 watt mark occasionally when there's really high power stuff going on, but let's see what we have here. This thing would always used to idle around the 100 watt mark. So in terms of settings right now, the overclocks are mostly turned off. We're running with stock clocks, but the turbo is still turned on. So it does 3.2 to 3.6. Ran into some instability earlier. So we're just going to wait for Battle.net's being a little bit too quick to start up. Kill the weather program. Cortana, I've turned off most of the features. As we know, Cortana can be such a resource hog. So I'm just waiting for it to finish, kill one drive. The curse client can go away too. Just gotta wait for it to finish doing its initial loading. 3.2, 3.6, wait until it sits on 800 megahertz, and then see what we have for power draw. But here it is at 3.6, and we got the ones going on here, but there's not a lot of activity on the graphics hardware. So, let's see here. A solid 800 megahertz minimum frequency, and the wattage is still around the 100 mark. Oh! Well, if it would stop jinxing me like that. So it's idling around the 100 mark. Let's bring up the power plans, and let's see what happens. We go to power saver, etc. It's actually, for power saver, let me set it up to turn off the hard drives after a minute. Power settings, will it shut off the hard? Yeah. Let's set it to turn off all the hard drives after 1 minute when it's in power save mode. That's a little excessive, but I want to see just what all these drives are contributing in terms of the idle and whatnot. So we're at the low end right now. Power save mode is going to shut off the drives after 1 minute of inactivity. I hope that means the optical drives too, but we're around the 100 watt mark. So now we're going to see what the difference is with the various drives that I have in here and what that does to the wattage. While we wait, let's turn the fans all the way down. And it takes like 10 watts off of it or something. So the fans have a role to play as well in terms of having a smart amount of fans, not necessarily a lot of them. More motors, more power. But Monolith should be a lot better at power at cooling with 140s right off the bat, not needing as many fans. Okay, let's wait a while for the drives to start shutting off and see what this goes down to. Well, once again, the joke is on me. We've gone from 105 to 103. At the same time, if I turn all the fans down on the fan controller, it makes more of a difference. All these fans combined together constitute about 10 watts out of the total. But even with the new graphics card defaulting to optimal power mode, the draw from the wall is still meh. That's why a more efficient power supply is very much in the cards here. But notice, just 10 watts. Roughly a 10 watt difference just with all these fans. For those wondering why I'm so obsessed with power efficient computing, if one of the side effects of generating a watt of electricity is heat. If you keep the heat down, you need less fans, so it kind of is a feedback loop. The more cooling you need, the more wattage there is because of the heat that's generated by, and it's a vicious cycle. That's why I'm such a tree hugger when it comes to the next computer I want to build. Alright, back to balanced mode. And it's already making a difference. Back up to the 110 watt mark. Now we're going to crank up World of Warcraft, blast the crap out of this system, and hope everything doesn't freeze. There we go, the Alliance Garrison. Lots of activity, NPCs walking around. I could always have this guy start casting some heals. Anyways, that would be Windybeard, the resto shaman that I've been having a blast with because of the increased healer damage. He can actually fight in between healing people and dumping water on them and stuff. Makes sense, a drunken dwarf would be using drinks to heal people even though it's water. They gotta put something in where they make this stuff look like beer. Then that would be perfect. Yep. Big fat guy with beer to heal people. Why hasn't Blizzard done something like that yet? Alright, so with this activity, a little bit of activity going on the screen, we're at the 180 watt mark. This is, I think, at the old Kepler card settings, though. So, that of course is the, that's the beer dog. You can get a free drink from the dog every time you... Well. Anyways, so 182. Turn down that music. And I'd be able to hear a thing I say. Right, we're not here to do a gaming video in disguise. We're here to test this stuff out. And, alright, so 180 watts. Currently, the processor temps are at 30 and 40 for graphics and well, CPU. Let's bust open. I got it in windowed full screen so I can quickly check the temperatures here. System. So we're at setting 4. This was the Kepler setting. This was the setting that... Let's go CMAA for this, so that's with a Radeon card. So this is setting 4. This is what the Kepler did. With the new graphics card, this thing now recommends setting 7, actually. Although it keeps popping it back to a window for some weird reason. Now let's go to advanced, and let's do recommendeds for these too. And let's turn off the frame limits, which will increase the wattage and the heat. So, and get my UI back to the right size too. UI scale, roughly this. There we go. A little bit of large print makes it look nice. Alright. Snooper the beer dog. Oh, getting some stuttering when turning, and it's loading the new textures now, but... Alright, now we've cracked the 200 watt mark. So, what are we up to for temperatures? We're totally gonna freeze this thing. So now we're into the 40s on the graphics card. Next. Now let's have some real fun with this. Keep the settings as they are, but use the 4K-ish render scale feature, which is supposed to renders it in 4K-ish or whatever the percentages of your display, and then downscales it to make everything look nicer, supposedly. So I have it at 200%. This is what cranked the temperature through the roof last time. So even though we're getting respectable frame rates with this setting, we're at nearly 300 watts. So not bad for a 10-year-old game, right? People say this game can't really challenge a system anymore, but it scales big time. And now the 1060 is now into the 60s for GPU temperature. Alright, now it's time to commit computer suicide or something. Crank everything all the way up. Yep. Now we're at 10. And now we're going to get CPU limited. I'll bet any money. SSA 4X plus CMAA, crank the anti-aliasing, crank everything. Everything all the way up. So, now we're probably getting CPU limited. Ooh, chuggy frame rates. And we're at 280 watts. The system is struggling, and it's at 280 watts. The frame rate's definitely dropping now. So, how hot are we getting? 69 degrees. Not bad, if I do say so myself, versus what the other one did. Now, let's really screw with it. Let's do triple buffering, reduce input lag. Those both use a ton of CPU. Let's turn everything all the way up and see if this thing blue screens. We might also be getting CPU limited via... the overclocking being turned off. So we're at 3.2 to 3.6 instead of 3.6 to 4, but it's an old Thuban processor. It's nothing except... Ooh, Shokarama! What are we at? And we're floating around the 300 watt mark. Oh man, this is getting bad. 288, alright, 300 watts. Okay, now let's use the GeForce experience to set this to full screen maximum settings and see what that does. This thing is going to freeze or crash or something. I forgot I put the texture filtering on high performance mode because I'm concerned I might have RX 480'd myself with that PCI Express thing. Maybe this card's doing too much or something through the bus. I don't know. The motherboard certainly seemed a little flaky. But I've gone into the NVIDIA. Let's watch these wattage numbers here. I went into the NVIDIA stuff. I set it to prefer maximum performance. So this thing should be running full blast. Also, I set the optimal settings, and I'm getting better frame rates. But I'm still floating. Oh, 300 watts! Woohoo! Now, can I turn anything else up on the graphics? Yep, we are full screen. So let's turn on the VSync. This thing is gonna freeze, crash, blue, everything's still on from earlier. Woohoo! Player only, let's do player and NPC, all physics. Post-process anti-aliasing. Here. That's just anything that can be turned up all the way. This thing is gonna melt. That's as high, everything's as high as it'll go. Anti-aliasing, hit apply. We're back. Miraculously, the game came back up. We're floating at just under the 300 watt mark. So it looks like 300 watts is really the ceiling for this thing. I'm getting chuggy frame rates, stuttering, the whole 9 yards, and it's in the 2s. What do we have for processor? We're in full screen mode too, so... Still in the 60s. So we're not hitting the 80s just yet. 64 and 30. Good stuff. Good stuff. Will the game come back now? Uh-oh. I lost the sound! It sounds like an Atari gone wrong. Yay for HDMI audio! And there goes the wattage. This is the kind of tinkering stuff that folks have been missing in this series, and here we are. Well, you know what? That was so random. This deserves an obligatory appearance by the 222 bot. We're back. Everything's back to normal now, in the low ones. So basically between 100 and 300 watts. So that tells me I should go for an 80 plus, maybe whatever I can afford, the highest 80 plus that I can afford. But I don't have to worry about the wattage too much with only one power efficient graphics card. And with a heavy emphasis on power efficiency, I can't imagine, and of course moving to a processor with a lower TDP, I can't really imagine that the new system this is probably going to be higher than the new system. Probably going to get more performance for less wattage, less heat, need less fans, the works. So that's what we're looking at for the new system. Assuming I even bother with Monolith and I don't just rehab the Silver Bullet instead. But yeah, very, very interesting. But then again, remember, Dad's computer with the Core i3 Haswell and no graphics card is 30 to 60 watts. So that's the kind of power supply we got to experiment with. Just got to make sure it has enough on the rails to handle extra drives, but doesn't need very much in terms of this in order to handle. And if this doesn't fix the stability problems in Tuxedo, then we know it's the motherboard, and we know overclocking damaged the system, and we know we got to be a little more responsible with our systems. Okay. Everything's quieting down now. We're in the low 20s and mid 30s for the temps on the CPU and GPU. I believe there's one more thing we have to check. Let's see how the camera's doing. I put it in the fridge because I figured it might have lower humidity in there, so that might help with the condensation from the wacko humidity we've had lately with the dew points in the 70s. So yeah, let's go see how the camera's doing and then call it a night. Now, not only is it glitching whenever you wiggle it like this, but now it won't focus because there's condensation everywhere in the camera.
Epic fail.
Yeah, this thing will be out of commission for the foreseeable future. Hope you don't mind this fake HD stuff, but hey, I'm glad I held on to the other camera now. Whatever. Then again, the refrigerator probably wasn't really the best option for that thing anyways. What it really needs to do is dry out. And what we need for that to happen is for the damn humidity to break. New England weather. Gotta love it. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.